Penn State On Demand is a service of Penn State Public Broadcasting, and now you can support WPSU when you shop online. Visit WPSU.org/shop to make purchases from national online retailers, and WPSU will receive a portion of the sale with no extra cost to you. So start your online shopping at WPSU.org/shop.
From the studios of Penn State Public Broadcasting, this is To the Best of My Knowledge. Good evening, I'm Graham Spanier. Tonight we'll talk about healthy aging. The older adult population is growing rapidly and expected to double in the next 30 years. People are living in good health as much as a decade longer than their parents did because they are staying healthy to an advanced age. Tonight we'll talk about healthy aging, and you can join the conversation. Call us at 1-800-543-8242. You can also email your questions to response@psu.edu. And now let's meet our guests. Stephen Zaret is the head of the Department of Human Development and Family Studies at Penn State. His research interests include caregiving for the elderly and functioning in the very old. Martin Slewinski is the director of the Penn State Center for Healthy Aging. He is a professor of Human Development and Family Studies and focuses his research on aging, stress, and working memory. Thank you both for being on our program tonight.
It's a pleasure.
Well, let's start at the general level and then work our way down to specifics. Let's talk first about, is there such a thing as healthy aging? We're all getting old and we all are aging, of course, but what is healthy aging and how much of it is going on? How do we make our aging healthy?
Well, that's a good question. It really gets to the heart of the issue. People have such a negative view of aging. They miss the fact that most people live their lives well. They're happy, they're satisfied with what they're doing, but there really is a second side to aging, and that's when people are affected by chronic diseases. So you have these two things. Aging is kind of a continuation of midlife with some little wrinkles, if you will, and then disease. And what we want to do really is figure out how we can extend and strengthen the healthy processes and then deal better with chronic disease when it limits people's functioning.
Your research center has always been known as the Center for Gerontology, and now just recently the Center for Healthy Aging. So tell us about that distinction.
Yes, I think Steve captured these issues quite nicely, and I think the change in the name from Gerontology to Center for Healthy Aging is to suggest and emphasize the fact that successful aging isn't just simply the absence of disease or the management of chronic illness, but it represents something very active in continued growth through midlife into old age and trying to maintain a engaged lifestyle and a good sense of well-being.
Now, I always thought that you were old when you reached the point about 20 years older than whatever I was at that time. Yeah. And now I'm not sure I know how to define when you're old and when you are aged. Talk to us about the semantics of all of this.
That's interesting. We did a study with people in their 80s and early 90s and asked for their subjective age, and about 75% of them said that they felt young. And I think what goes on is that we have a sense of selves that's continuous, and we're the same person with some added experiences, some added wear and tear, but we're the same person, and so we don't change into some other category. There's a lot of continuity, and now I think what happens is that with each passing year there's a certain accumulated risk that something bad will happen, and certainly when you get up into the 80s and the 90s, then chronic illness is really quite common, but you still see remarkable people there, and finding ways to do very important things.
Now, if you're running a center for healthy aging, you must have some definition of what age of folks you're really talking about here.
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's a very interesting study that was done by the Pew Research Foundation, which asked younger adults about the kinds of problems they expected to have when they grew older, and a group of older adults about the kinds of problems they experienced. And what was interesting is that the younger adults expected to experience more problems than the seniors reported having. So I think what that means is aging is not nearly as bad as we fear once we're there, so we imagine we're younger than we actually are, where the truth of the matter is that it's really not so bad, mostly as you're advancing from midlife into older age.
And I think one study that I saw showed that when you ask people who are a little older, elderly, how old they felt on the average 13 years younger than they actually were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very, very interesting.
Yeah.
I know we're going to have a lot of our listeners and viewers very interested in this topic and calling in. And we already have our first person online. So we're going to open up the phone lines early because there's going to be a lot of questions for you two. And we're going to start with Michael, who's calling in from Warren, Pennsylvania. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Doctor. How are you this evening?
Good.
Doctor, I have a question. A female who is in her mid-70s has a problem with losing some weight. Is there any secret to weight loss for a person who is really inactive and would like to lose some weight?
Well, let's jump right in with that. That's a specific and important question.
Yeah, it is a difficult question, and without knowing a lot of specifics, I can really not fully address it. But the two things that really go into weight loss are increasing activity and controlling what you eat. And if some of it is motivation, then working with professionals who deal with weight loss would be the way to go, because they'll also, besides the technical things of what you need to do to lose weight, they'll work on the motivational side of it.
I concur with Steve. Without knowing more about the details, it's hard to make a specific recommendation, but a solid nutrition plan and an exercise plan in consultation with your physician would be, what I would recommend. And this doesn't necessarily mean a complete change of your lifestyle. Even going for a little walk every day can make all the difference.
Now, I play racquetball somewhat vigorously, and I'm just making an assumption that 10 years from now, I hope I'm still playing, but I won't be playing as vigorously. So will I also be eating less? But what if I'm still eating the same amount and exercising less?
Well, your metabolism does change as it slows down as you age, and I think one of the challenges is trying to find the right balance of maintaining good nutrition that's calibrated with your level of activity. So there may need to be some adjustments. Either you work a little harder, exercise a little more, or cut down on some of the snacks.
Now, I've noticed, maybe I'm hanging out with the wrong group, that a lot of people as they get older and they get into their 60s and 70s actually become thinner without necessarily doing a lot more exercise. Is that a metabolism issue, or is that not inappropriate for generalization the way I have?
Oh, I don't know I wouldn't know the data on that. That's that's an interesting observation, though.
Well, one possibility, there are changes to our senses and taste changes with aging, so that there could be some changes to what they eat in their diet that may be subtle and unintended, but just a consequence of food tasting differently.
Switching gears just a little bit, you always hear people as they get older talking about how they start forgetting things. They forgot where their glasses are, where their keys are, and I've had the experience where I forget the name of somebody I know very well, not permanently, just for a moment, and then of course I remember it. How real is that phenomenon? What is it all about? Memory with aging?
Well, what you were describing, sort of everyday failures of memory, and those are very real, and we all experience them. And there can be a lot of factors that are associated with that. We did a study that showed that when older adults experience a stressful day, on that day, their memory changes by an amount that's equivalent to aging 4 years. So it could be you're having a very busy day, a stressful day, and that can produce a transient effect on your memory. So I think these minor forgetful spells, there's no issue with that. It's if these become persistent, begin to interfere with your daily activities and your normal routine, and if they become a problem that leads to changes in your social activities.
Any particular warning signs?
Change. If it's sudden change, it's likely to be an illness or some acute problem that needs to be addressed. If it's a gradual change, really faster than you've been experiencing, then it's something that really makes a difference. But what you were saying about forgetting a name, one of the things to take into account is the fact that after living 50, 60 years, you have stored many more names.
That's right. That's why I'm forgetting,
Yes.
because I got so many names in my head now.
And it really is an inevitable thing. It's partly an information processing
All
problem.
those 100,000 Penn State donors.
That's
it.
right.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And the students. Yeah.
Let's take a call from Norma, who's with us from Boswell. Good evening, Norma.
Hi.
You're on the air.
Okay. What I want to know is, what do you advise? What do you advise folks that live to be nearly 80, are in both good health, my husband and I, but we realize that at any time something drastic could happen to either one of us. We're in good health at the point now, but what is the best plan for us? We live in our own home, we own our own home, and we don't have any plans yet to sign up to go to a nursing facility. But what is your
So
advice?
are you asking mostly about living situations and what possibly to get ready for?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, well, a couple of things. One, you know, have legal things in order. Have somebody who could take power of attorney, who can make healthcare decisions and financial decisions if you need it. And then explore possibilities. If you like living in your home, there are increasingly ways that people can stay in their homes and get the help that they need to do so. If you think that you'd like to move into a place, a retirement community, where help would be more readily available, scout those out and see what you think of them and get a sense of what the options are. And then you'll be ready when, you know, when you might need them.
Anything to add, Marty?
No, planning ahead so you don't have to make a quick decision when something does happen is the best advice, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Norma. Let's turn now to Tim. Tim, welcome to the program. You're calling from Sunbury, right? Hello, Tim. You're on the air, Tim.
Yep.
Yep, jump right in.
Oh, I got a question for the two doctors that you got visiting.
Just listen to your phone with us, Tim, and not your television, because I hear a little delay there.
Just listen to your phone with us, Tim, and not your television.
Okay, well, we're going to see if we can get Tim back on the line with a little more clarity there. We were talking about forgetting a little while ago, and I think it's important to talk about differences between maybe just routine day-to-day forgetting and Alzheimer's. More and more people are aware of Alzheimer's and talking about that now. Could you give us, between you, a little lesson on what Alzheimer's is and how we contend with it?
Well, Alzheimer's is one of a group of degenerative diseases that all affect memory. Alzheimer's is the best known, but it actually only accounts for about 60, maybe 70% of the cases that we call dementia. And what it really is there's ongoing progressive damage to the brain, and it affects areas of memory, learning, judgment, other areas of functioning. So people really can't do these things anymore. You gave an excellent example of what's normal aging. You forget a name and then it comes back to you. But with Alzheimer's, the forgetting, or the other dementias, the forgetting is much more profound.
What can be done about Alzheimer's? Is there a medication, diet, other activities that help you negotiate it a little better?
Yeah, there are medications that are approved for treatment of Alzheimer's disease, and these can provide in some individuals some temporary restoration of cognitive function. There's a recent review done by the National Institute of Health the conclusion of which said that there isn't sufficient evidence to make strong recommendations of the kinds of lifestyle activity decisions that can prevent Alzheimer's disease, but there are some things you can do. Leading intellectually and socially engaged lifestyles is associated with a reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease. Maintaining physical activity is also, and there are different kinds of conditions that are associated with Alzheimer's disease, so smoking and diabetes. So manage your diabetes if you have that, improve your health behaviors, and reduce smoking would be recommendations.
And while we really don't know much about preventing it, we know a lot about how to care for patients, but we don't do it. And that's really, it's really something that I feel a great deal of personal sadness about, because that's the area that I've focused my research on since the late 1970s. And we know how to provide good care for a person with dementia. We know that different kinds of communication, different kinds of reassurance, different kinds of activities make a difference. Let me give you one example. We know that increasing the exercise of a person with dementia improves sleep at night. So what do people with sleep problems get? Exercise? No, they get a pill which has side effects, which may actually worsen memory. And I mean, we don't do simple, straightforward things because it's puzzling to me. I do have to say, because there are a lot of things that we know how to do, that we can do in in a clinic setting, but we can't get it out to the general public in in a way that people pick it up.
If you're just joining us, I'm Graham Spanier, president of Penn State, and this is To the Best of My Knowledge on WPSU, Penn State Public Broadcasting, and PCN, the Pennsylvania Cable Network. Our topic tonight is healthy aging with Dr. Stephen Zirrett, head of the Department of Human Development and Family Studies at Penn State, and Dr. Martin Slewinski, director of the Penn State Center for Healthy Aging. You can join the conversation. Call us at 1-800-543-8242 or email us at response@psu.edu. Let's now take our next call. It's from James, who is calling from Drexel Hill. Hi, James, you're on the air.
Hello. I'm McGuigan from Delaware County in Drexel Hill. What I find that keeps me alive and perking along pretty good is pills. I get a lot of pills from the VA, and it really makes me work. And the other thing that I find that's good for you is a good shot of Irish whiskey.
I can't argue with that.
Well, James, how old are you, if I might ask?
I'm 85 years old.
85.
I'm very active in the Marine Corps League. And I get around pretty good. I still drive. And I feel pretty good.
Now, you're the first person in a while who I've heard talk positively about taking a lot of pills. A lot of folks kind of complain that their doctors have given them too many pills to take. So how many pills do you take each day on the average?
12.
12 pills. 12 different, 12 different kinds of medication.
12 different kinds of pills. The one that bothers me the most is that damn Lasix. Boy, that's brutal. Give that to racehorses, you know.
Well, okay, but you said it keeps you going.
You know,
it feels pretty good, and I really appreciate the VA hospital in Philadelphia. They really monitored me very well, and they're nice people down there.
Well, that's good. So
there are really
Zirrett.
many things. When we talk to people James's age and older, we find that people have a wide range of things that they do. And he mentioned whiskey. I just read a story about the two oldest twins in the world. They're a couple of women in their late 90s in France, and one pipes up and says, I have a glass of whiskey a day, and the other says, and I have a liqueur every day. And it really, they have a lifestyle, they enjoy their lives, and there's probably no one path to healthy aging, but a lot of different paths.
Well, he needs something to wash down all those pills.
Yeah, I guess he does.
Yeah. We're seeing more of this, aren't we? More and more medication that is being discovered that I'm sure is enhancing and maybe extending the lives of a lot of elderly folks. How do you as social scientists kind of balance that with some of the other things you're trying to do?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we do look at is adherence to medication, adherence to treatment regimen. So, the caller seems like he's following the doctor's orders and keeping good track and monitoring of his medication. So we study ways in which we can facilitate people in keeping track of their medication, making sure they've taken the right ones, and helping family members monitor as well. Yeah.
But for a lot of things that are dealt with either by medication or surgeries or other procedures, there actually are a range of alternatives that may help. For a lot of older people don't get physical therapy when they need it that may correct conditions. A lot of people, as I said earlier, get a pill for something like sleeping when changes in lifestyle, cutting down on caffeine might have a more beneficial effect. And I think as social and behavioral scientists, we are looking at a range of these alternatives because the real name of the game in geriatrics is chronic illness. We're not going to treat it, we're going to manage it. And some of the management really is going to be medication, and when it works, it's great. But some of the management needs to be lifestyle, behavior, nutrition, and a range of things that we don't normally think about.
Our next caller is Ben from Tarentum. Ben, good evening. You're on the air.
My question is, I wonder what your guests could tell us about depression in the elderly. Depression in the elderly.
Yes, that's an important topic. We should spend some time on that. Who'd like to jump in?
Well, it is an important topic, and it's something where a person who's feeling depressed really should have a conversation with his or her doctor and begin exploring the treatment options. Treatment for depression, whatever the person's age, works. And that treatment can be medication and it can be psychotherapy. There are sometimes some lifestyle changes that can also help with depression. So there are things that can be done.
The rates of depression in the elderly who are living in their homes are actually quite low. There are certain triggers that can increase the risk of depression. So loss of independence. So if you have to give up your driver's license, that could be a trigger for placing you at increased risk for experiencing or developing depression. Having to move to a different residence is also a very important transitional time where you'd want to be very attentive to the development.
Is there anything inherently about aging that ups the incidence of depression, or is it these life experiences around it that...
In fact, aging is the opposite. What we see when we look at studies comparing emotional well-being and happiness across the entire lifespan, in fact, what you see is as people age, they report being happier, more emotional well-being, and higher levels of quality of life than do their younger counterparts who are middle-aged or in their 20s. So overall, all things being considered, in fact, you see an improvement in emotional well-being, but there are conditions that can trigger individuals who are at increased risk or vulnerable to health conditions.
Let's talk next to Betty from Huntington. Thanks for calling our program tonight, Betty.
Hi, yes, you're welcome. Yes, my question surrounds the value of older people in the workforce. And what I mean specifically by that is people who are of retirement age, as I am. I'm 64 years old. I'm not retired, and I'm actually considering changing careers at this point. And so I'm curious what your findings are about the value of people in their 60s or so in the workforce today.
Betty, let me just ask you a question. As I get closer to it, 64 doesn't sound that old to me, but I'm curious about your impressions of how you're perceived in the workforce and whatever environment you're in. Do you think of yourself as being kind of old now, or do others, or are you just looking ahead a bit?
Well, I think, based on my experience, I think it may be based on the field or the career that one is involved in. I made a career change a few years back, and the field that I left, I was starting to feel sort of old in that field. The field that I'm in now, I feel quite, quite comfortable with my age. But so I think it depends on the field and the kind of professional surroundings one is in.
Any reactions to Betty?
Yeah, I think retirement isn't necessarily the best option for individuals in terms of promoting and maintaining their sense of social connectedness and sense of worth. And I think employers are beginning to recognize the value of experience and responsibility that senior workers can bring to the workplace. So finding a change in career that's rewarding to you, I think is a great way to think about your second life as opposed to just retirement.
Now, people just have different feelings about it, don't they? I know people who, even in their 40s, openly talk about their goal being to retire soon. Now, maybe they don't pull it off, but some people genuinely do retire in their 50s, and no names to be mentioned, but I know people well into their 80s who have no interest in retiring. So, I mean, it's really the whole spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think having a plan, if you want to retire, that's fine, but having a plan for activities to be able to maintain some sort of engagement with life is what's important.
Let's take a call from Jack. Jack's on the line from Altoona. Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. Very briefly, I consider myself a young man, and I have the sound turned off, so I can't hear what you're saying, but I was just 79 on Friday. And I went through 3 retirements. I retired from the Foreign Service. I started my police career as a trooper, then the chief of police, assistant chief of detectives, and then with the Foreign Service. And we come back to the United States, and we took a three-week vacation all the way up north with my 3 children at the time. They were small, and I was bored. So I was married at the time, and my mother-in-law says, "Well, go out and see Major Ramsey, maybe a Kentucky Fried Chicken, maybe he'll give you a job." And that was a mistake. 22 years later, I retired a second time. Then I got a part-time job with Sherwin-Williams, and then that got me into interior decorating for 10, 15 years.
Yeah. So what's the next project?
So then we started our Habitat for Humanity in Bedford. Took us almost a year to get certified, and that was just a great deal for me because they only work on Saturdays, and that gave me a chance to work during the week. Well, make a long story short, we ran out of money because money's not that easy. We had a lot of donations. We built, I think, 7 houses in Bedford County. Now I'm living here right outside of Altoona. But I moved to Woodbury, and I had 2 clients. One was advanced dementia, Alzheimer's, and the other was schizophrenic. But my problem was this. The man had schizophrenic. I fully believe he could function by himself. And but it took me, under this Privacy Act, took me almost 3 months to just to look at his record at mental health. See, I didn't know if he was going to pull a knife on me or the other client or not. But what I did for the man with Alzheimer's, if I would, we had a good social life. We went dancing every Friday or Saturday night, sometimes both. If I wore a tie, I didn't outdress them. I put ties on them. If I just wore a golf shirt, I did that. But when we would leave the house, I wanted to keep his brain activated. When we leave the house, I would say, "Bob, which way do we turn here?" And give me the name of the street. And it would take him a while, and no coaching on my part. And then on the way back home, I come up to the intersection. Where do we turn? And where do we live? And I got him registered with the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, and which I think there was another organization. You gentlemen, your guests there might know.
Well, Jack,
more about
let me just interrupt you and get a reaction to that. What Jack's talking about is, of course, what he's doing with these folks is great, but he's very sensitive to the importance of keeping their minds active. Tell us how important that is.
It's important, but what I heard from Jack, and Jack, you're doing a terrific job, is the kindness that you brought to the situation. When people respond to that, whether they can remember what day it is or not, they respond to kindness.
We've got Rick from State College on the line now. Good evening, Rick.
Good evening, Dr. Spanier. Sort of a tough act to follow. I would like to talk along the same lines of a very well-written, well-researched article I read about the effects of isolation on the mind as people get older. There are people who their children geographically do not live close to them, and their peer associates as they get older, some of them die, some of them move to Florida, some of them move to where their children are, and they become isolated. And right now we have an industry in the United States that sometimes I feel is financially motivated in diagnosing these people with depression, putting them in places where they're treated for depression. These antidepressant drugs are almost becoming the aspirin of our time. And my point is that this article said that there are amazing things that happen when people have interrelationships with other people, and there are frightening things that happen when they find themselves in a situation where
let's get a comment on that. I would think being isolated and alone is tough at any age, but how does it play into aging?
Well, I think it's the complement of what we were talking about earlier, the importance of social engagement, maintaining cognitive stimulation in your daily activities, and when you're isolated, that can be very hard to do. I think it's important if you know someone who's in that situation to try and find ways to encourage that person to socialize perhaps in manners that they hadn't in the past, becoming involved in different clubs, hobbies, activities. I mean, sort of the obvious, trying to get them out of the house and engaged in life again.
One of the things we're finding in some research that we're conducting with colleagues at Purdue University is that technology actually keeps families more closely knit. And we see this actually in everyday life with our students. They're in much more constant contact with their parents than we were with ours when you had to go down the hall and drop coins into a phone in order to call home, and it was terribly expensive. But people do maintain contact with phone now much more, with Skype, and they travel more. So what used to be a long distance is something that people are willing to do and able financially to do. So family ties perhaps are stronger overall. Now that doesn't mean for everybody, and the caller was right about the effects of isolation. I would want to say that if anything, depression in the elderly is underdiagnosed, not overdiagnosed. Certainly there are some people who aren't depressed who may get medications for it, but by and large, there are more people who need help who aren't getting it.
I have an 87-year-old mother living in Chicago, and she's on email with me every day. And in our family, we marvel at that. Who would have ever thought that my mother would be on email that regularly? Very interesting. Ken from Sunbury, you're next in our queue. Hi, Ken.
Hi. I got a question. I eat late at night, and I want to know if that would be harmful and stuff like that. And people say that ain't good for me. And I want to know what can I do, and what time can I eat, and what time is actually supper time for the regular supper.
I didn't catch what happens late at night, Ken?
Okay. Oh, eat late at night.
Oh, you eat late at night?
Yeah, and after I get done eating, I go to bed, and people tell me that ain't good for me. When I go to after I get done eating late at night, and I go to bed right away. Does that mean if I go to bed late at night, does that harm me because I don't get up and exercise?
So I'm not aware of research that shows eating your dinner later in the evening is necessarily worse for your health than eating earlier. I think it's sometimes harder to sleep if you've just had a big meal. So if it's interfering with your sleep, that might be something to think about. If it's not, I'm not sure that it's necessarily.
Yeah. And I assume that he could, if he thought it was an issue, try eating a little earlier and see if it makes a difference one way or the other. Probably we all have different rhythms, different patterns of activity, so could vary from person to person too. Rosemary, you're next on our show. Thanks for being on our program tonight.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, from BALA Kenwood.
Yeah.
My question is, I do a lot of marketing consulting with boomers, and I have a website called Boomer Marketing. My question is, have you done any research that looks at various measurements, disease measurements for the boomer generation who were born in 1946 to 1964? I'm at the other end in 1960. I'm at the older end, the 46 end, in terms of chronic disease, obesity, and whatever other health measurements that you have that compare by generations. Have you done any of that type of research?
So not necessarily the research that I do, but I think the data are quite clear that the trends for indices like BMI are increasing.
Body mass index.
So are you heavier than how you should be given your height? That has been increasing across the generations at an alarming pace, and that carries with it risks for other kinds of secondary conditions.
Higher incidence of diabetes,
metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease.
At the same time, I think there's at least anecdotal evidence that people are in better shape now than they used to be. Many people are reaching old age, that they're more likely to be fit and exercising more. So you have really a divide. People who are doing all the things that they might do, and other people who maybe need to do more of it.
And we're worried that trend might reverse as the obesity trend continues to.
Of course, life expectancy is increasing, lifespan is increasing. Things that used to kill us before, we're getting early indications of now and treated. So we're living longer and aging more. And as I referenced at the beginning of the show, more people are going to be in that zone where they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and even beyond, that are going to have to cope with all of these issues of aging. It's very interesting for someone like me who comes out of demography.
Yeah, I actually do a life expectancy test with my undergraduate students at the start of class. And for a college-age woman today who finishes her degree, doesn't smoke, and has fortunate genetics, her life expectancy is early 90s. And when we talk about that, they suddenly get very interested in learning more about aging.
Maggie from Lycoming, thank you for calling in.
Hi, I was just listening to the comments, especially the gentleman, Ken. He said when he eats at night, okay, can't sleep. Well, heavens, Ken, don't eat at night and be a little bit more weight conscious. Okay, you know, heavy people don't feel good about themselves. I think that brings on depression, too. I'm 69. And I don't think of myself numerically. I think of myself as something good's going to come my way. I look for something great to happen the next day. I keep myself stylish. I don't feel intimidated because the people that I work with are younger than me. I look better than they do because I exercise and I keep myself down. I don't think getting older is that bad. I'm grateful that I look like my mother instead of my father because she was the more attractive one. But I guess they gave me both some good genes. But keep up with the styles. Don't feel old or don't think of yourself as old because that's what you're going to be. Thank you so much, and I love your program. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Maggie. Well, there's a positive attitude.
Well, and with some good advice.
Yeah. And that was a great example of the kinds of personality characteristics that are associated with successful aging, a sense of control, that you can be efficacious in making decisions and in taking control of your life and your health.
Don from Lewistown's on the air. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm sitting here watching you on the screen. Now, I'm an 87-year-old person, very, very active. But I developed vertigo. Now, I hope this is in your realm of what you're talking about. I have been to hospitals, ERs, doctors. They have found no way to stop it. I found a way, but I would like to hear these gentlemen give their version what can do to help people with vertigo. I'm over it now. I just spent 7 weeks of living you know what. And I'd like to hear these two gentlemen give me some kind of an answer on that question.
Okay, well, I'm glad you raised that question, because it was one I wanted to be sure to get to, because the data that I've seen show that about 1/3 of people over 65 have a fall. And these balance issues become very significant in aging.
Yeah, so I couldn't speak to what worked for you, but there are things that you can do to reduce the risk of falls. So making sure your eyeglasses are up to date, so vision problems can sometimes lead to falls, and then changing things around your home, moving away loose power cords, making sure rugs are tapped down. So those are changes to your home that you can do to reduce the risk of falling, and then also maintaining a high level of fitness can help improve balance. But in terms of specific treatments for vertigo, I'd be interested in what the caller found useful.
Yeah. Don, are you still with us?
I'm still with you.
Okay, so tell us what worked for you.
All right, this is odd. Some people in my younger age did not believe in chiropractic. And I went to a chiropractor and a muscle relaxation person. And 3 treatments. And I am clear of vertigo after 7 weeks of not being able to stand. I could not drive. My house is 88 foot long, and I couldn't even walk one end to the other without touching a wall. But I found that the muscle therapy was the best cure that I ever found in my life. And 3 treatments, believe this, after 7 weeks of living, you know what.
Well, that's
and I wish there's so many people I've talked to have had vertigo.
That's quite a testimonial, and
wish they could pass that on.
Yeah, well, you have done that now. Thank you very much, Don. We appreciate that. So it sounds like it was a musculoskeletal issue principally for him, and glad that he got that taken care of. Stu from State College is with us now on the line. Hi, Stu.
Hi, Dr. Spanier. I'd like to cover a couple of points. You mentioned elderly losing weight. Well, my wife and I are in our early 80s, and I went from 183 to 170, and I seem to stay at that, and I didn't try to do it. Secondly, I was an avid tennis player like you're an avid athlete in that respect, and I got very bad arthritis in my shoulders, so now I swim 3 times a week and ride bike the other times. And my general thought is if you keep exercising, you're going to stay healthy. Also, I'm involved with what's called Aging in Place in Center County, and that's for people who are interested in staying in their homes. The AARP says that 89% of the seniors would prefer to remain in their homes, and we have an organization going up. We have a website, which is www.aipcentercounty.org, and so we're interested. We're in the organizational process right now and going ahead with a lot of steam, I hope.
Yeah. Thank you for that suggestion.
Stu really made 2 good points. What he said about tennis is one of the things that's very important. It's something that Paul Baltus, our former colleague here, emphasized about successful aging, that you have to, when you can't do something, you adapt and find something to substitute for it. And he did that, and he's absolutely right about the value of staying as active as you can. And the other point about aging in place, people do want to stay at home. They can control what happens to them better if they stay at home. And these type of organizations are really very important.
One of the things I'm trying to keep in my mind is my memory of, in my youth, well into my 30s, just playing a lot of basketball, loving everything about basketball. But at some point realizing my body is not taken well to this banging around that you get in basketball. Switched to racquetball, and that's been great. But there may come a time where I have to do something else. You got to be flexible and realize that not every sport, probably not every form of exercise is ideal at every age.
Exactly right, yeah.
Let's turn now to Mervyn from Penfield.
Yes.
Hi there, Mervyn.
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Do you have a question for us?
Yes.
Okay, we're not getting a good connection with Mervyn, so let's now move to Lillian, who's calling from Williamsport. Good evening, Lillian.
Good evening. I don't know whether this is a question or what, but I am almost 84 years old, and I just bought a new snowblower, and I cut my own grass. I do my own painting. I do all my work, and I sew every day. And in fact, I have 17 sewing machines. And people seem to think I'm goofy or something because I have made 1,750 big quilts for the poor people. I gave them all away. I never charged.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
And I just am beginning to feel there must be something wrong with me that people look at me and say, and you drive to State College by yourself and go square dancing once a week, weather permitting. And I go to big square dances all the time that our association and federation has.
Well, could it be that they're a little jealous, maybe?
I don't know, but I'm beginning.
I think it's pretty amazing, but I have to tell you, Lillian, the snowblower thing makes me a little nervous.
Oh?
Well,
I live on a 4-lane highway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great to maintain that high level of physical activity. The quilting is a great hobby. It will keep your dexterity intact. But I would be cautious about engaging in activities that require heavy lifting, especially out in the snow where it could be icy. Just be very cautious about doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Be sure your boots are good and going to resist slipping as well as possible too.
It's certainly better than shoveling.
But I think the answer is that you're doing things right and keep it up.
Yeah, great approach to life, and if other folks think she's goofy, well, we know she's not, right?
Right.
Let's take a call from State College. Ann, you're with us on the air. Hello, Ann.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to compliment, and I'm a little late in doing it, but Dr. Steve Zarrett was a great, great, great help to not only me, but my entire family. Oh, gosh, almost 13, 14 years ago, when I first moved here to State College and had two parents. One was a bad stroke and the other one was Alzheimer's. We lived 4 hours away, and he literally took me by the hand and got me through how to take care of them, and they lived 8 more years after he sent me to a friend of his who was a gerontologist. And I just have never been able to say enough. He was my saint of State College.
Ann, that's very nice of you to call it. Steve, you done good there. That's
Thank you, Ann. I'm glad it was helpful.
Oh, you're welcome. I just couldn't listen to this and not pass that on.
Well, thank you for calling in. Let's take a call from Dick, who's calling in tonight from Johnstown. Hi, Dick.
Yes, good evening. First, Dr. Spanier, I want to thank you for hosting such a program. It's always interesting, and to take the time to do this as a college university president, I think is great. Just a comment on exercise. I think I've read many times that if there's one thing doctors could put in a pill, it would be exercise. But then I think we would have to remember that if we are on medication, almost always you take the medication daily. So I think that exercise daily probably is the answer, as well as a plant-based diet. I think that's also very important. But Dr. Spanier, if you could just spend a second to tell the audience a little about the villages at Penn State, what they are doing regarding healthy aging. I would appreciate your comments. And again, thank you very much for the good program.
Sure. Well, the village at Penn State, you probably know a little bit about it, our guests do, was an attempt to encourage a retirement village to develop that could have some programmatic ties with the university for internships for students, for research activities, for volunteers who would want to come and participate in activities at Penn State, and that's all worked out very well. I think there may be two kinds of people who want to retire into people who maybe want to go to Florida and they're going to be around more elderly folks. And some folks want to come to a community like this, a university community, where they can be around other retirees, but also a lot of young people, educational programs, sports, culture, and so on. And that was the idea behind that.
Yeah, there's really something to do every day, whether you're living at the village or living independently, and it's a very good place to live.
Well, thank you for that call. Let's turn now to Ken, who is calling from State College. Hi, Ken.
Hi. Dr. Spanier, I have a question about finances. It's interesting, in this almost hour program, nobody has mentioned the financial aspects of aging.
Yeah.
And I think my wife and I are fortunate and we're financially comfortable, but we do know people who are on the edge, and given the potential cuts in Medicare and Social Security that are being talked about, I wonder what your panel would say about people who are living longer and aging a little less comfortably, but are having to face the financial exigencies of the future.
Well, just one thing I would point out, that the Affordable Health Care Act does have some provisions that have already gone into effect, and that will be going into effect in 2011, which can help ease the burden, especially with purchase of prescription medicine. So I would encourage people to look into that if they're feeling the pinch with some of these costs associated with health care.
Yeah, and I think, Ken, you really brought up an important issue that we need to address. With people living longer, they're outliving their pensions, and one of the things that Congress has been talking about is slowing the annual increases in Social Security. Back in the bad old days, Congress had to authorize a change every year, and so they didn't. And older people fell farther and farther behind. In the early 70s, an inflation adjustment was put in so that there was an automatic rise. And that's been scaled back appropriately so, because it was probably a bit too high. But now people are talking about scaling it back further. And your point is really on target. There are a lot of people for whom that small change will make a big difference in the quality of their lives.
I think we have time for a question from Chris from Montgomeryville. Hello, Chris.
Hello there, Dr. Spanier. I'm kind of on the other end of the spectrum. I'm in mid-40s with an aging parent living with us now, that we want to maintain living independently and, as one doctor said, aging well and with a great sense of well-being while having a chronic illness. What are your senses, or what have you heard about some remote monitoring technology that is out there? I was referred to a company that is doing monitoring of the chronic disease that we can actually access, my siblings and I, and they're actually imparting a behavioral management component too that would really help her, my mother, help her, kind of manage it herself and promote her own health and well-being and age in place. Have any familiarity?
There's so many people coming into this period of life, and a big concern for younger folks taking care of their parents. I I assume there's going to be a proliferation of technology out there to help us.
There already is, and a lot of this is still in the works, but there are some companies now who do offer these services, and having a sort of accurate and continuous monitoring of your parents that you're concerned about can actually make all the difference in the world in keeping them in their homes.
Well, we have just scratched the surface of a most complicated topic, and I see that our phone lines are jammed with callers, email coming in. We'll have to do another show on this, but I want to thank you both. And I hope all of you, our viewers, will join me in thanking our guest tonight, Dr. Stephen Zerett, head of the Department of Human Development and Family Studies at Penn State, and Dr. Martin Slewinski, director of the Penn State Center for Healthy Aging. And thank you for watching. Tonight's program will be stored in an electronic archive that can be accessed through WPSU.org. This site also links to online resources on tonight's topic. We hope you'll join us on Tuesday, January 18th, when we talk about medicating children. That's our next topic. To the Best of My Knowledge is a production of Penn State Public Broadcasting. For all of us here at WPSU, I'm Graham Spanier, president of Penn State, wishing you a good night.